Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
Welcome to the August 20th Economic Development Authority meeting. And before we get started, I'd like to thank Neil for filling in for me last month.
You did a good job.
Appreciate it. Did a great job. He made me nervous. Given that, why don't we do the roll call?
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Mr. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Good.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Smith is absent. Mr. James.
Here.
And Mr. Harmon.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Great. I trust that everyone had an opportunity to review the July 16th minutes. If there are no revisions, request move for adoption.
You don't say this. Second.
Thank you both. I'll read the roll call vote here. Mr. Barber.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Yeah.
I'd like to recognize Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Chair, the item is approved by a vote of 7-0.
We have a rather lengthy agenda today, so we'll just jump right into it with the old minutes.
Your first item is the acquisition of property at 1028 High Street, 1013 through 1015 Queen Street and 400 Hatton Street. These are commonly referred to as the Holmes property. We have some good news for you today. We did close on the properties. Just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was a official closing date of July 26th, I believe. So you are now the proud owners of these properties. And I will also share with you that we have also been working in the interim with Harvey Lindsay to get the properties listed. That is going to include the vacant land of 1020 High Street. So we are already working on a listing for the properties, as well as working on a plan for redevelopment and revitalization. So we had a preliminary architectural assessment of each of the structures. They did come back with some concerns about the structural integrity of the properties overall. I know that you may have witnessed some of them look like they need to be demolished. That will likely be the case, but there are some buildings where we're looking at the ability to save and revitalize the property. So I do believe we're going to work to get a structural assessment to be sure that there are no properties that can be saved before proceeding with the demolition. The properties have been added to our insurance. We've also added them to the landscaping contract. So we're also working to make sure they're secure. And we will need to have the properties boarded. There are some broken windows, some areas that need to be addressed. I'm asking for your authorization to move forward with that kind of as an emergency need there. I have obtained an initial quote for that work. I'm expecting it to not cost more than $15,000 to go and have everything boarded and secured. But with your authorization, I would like to move forward with doing that.
You want to vote on that?
The consensus, Jeff, and there's a vote necessary. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Take a vote. Yeah.
So moved, authorization to
Second.
secure the property.
Second.
I'll read the roll. Mr. Barber.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon.
Yes. Yes.
Item is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Stop. Yeah.
Okay, your next old business item is 1117, 1121 High Street. These are the Shiny Computer and Cleanway Environmental properties that we commonly refer to them as. 1117 High Street is vacant. We are in the process of putting out a roof replacement bid package. And the architect, Mosley Architects, is currently working on a renovation package for the interior of 1117 High Street to create a vanilla shell, as well as the exterior of the property to really kind of overhaul it, update it, so that we can begin marketing the space for a tenant or potential purchaser. So that is underway. They are on separate tracks. So the roof replacement is really kind of the priority because we do have some roof leaks at 1117 and minor leaks at 1121. But that is in process. So I'm hopeful that we'll have here in the near future some bids to come back with you to consider.
I have a question about the, with the property that's attached to it in the back. So the roof line is separate. Is it one flat roof or?
Yeah.
Well, so that's a great question that you've asked. They share a common wall, and the roof, there is a transition between the property 1117 and the property at the rear. But it is a flat roof. So our roof does drain onto the other property. The property at the rear, the auto repair building, has recently replaced their section. And that transition needs to be addressed there. And we'll be able to replace our roof. But it is a flat roof. It drains across both.
On property.
Good question.
I do think, and maybe we can talk about this later, but I'd like to at least have us participate in a discussion around 1028 and 1117. And I think that discussion should be, traditionally, we clear it properly, list it, somebody comes in. Because it's in the innovation district, I think it provides us with probably the first opportunity to kind of define what we like to see there. Rather than just listing it and see who comes and requests the property. And I haven't had a chance to really go over this with Brian, so I apologize for that. But, maybe we ought to have a small subcommittee that really does some research and says this is what the city or the community would like to see there. Maybe visit a couple of cities of similar size to see what things they have done. This may be the only opportunity we have to kind of define what will go in the innovation district. And I think we have an opportunity to set the tone for what should go there, what it should look like, and really be a shining example of what we would like to see there. We almost have a clean slate. And the other concern is that there are certain materials in the building that we're trying to hold on to, but if we knew what we were putting there, it might make sense to hold on to some of that history there and incorporate it into whatever that might be. I just hate to see us miss an opportunity to have some influence on what goes there. So those are my thoughts. I'm certainly open to any other commissioners' ideas and suggestions, if that's something we would like to do.
Well, I definitely think we should look at it in terms of that because it's the right much space. It's, we don't have a lot of opportunities where we have that much space that we can work with. So it would be great if it was something that, like you say, would be the premier of that zone that would indicate what that zone is going to be.
Okay. I'm going to move on, just in interest of time, to 1021 1107 High Street. These are the two properties that are under contract with A4 Development Group. That's Mr. Keels and the Kings Landing Townhome Project. At our July meeting, we did provide a 90-day extension to allow for the final approvals of the engineering plan, a subdivision plat document, and building plans. All three of those items have been submitted. They're in various stages of the review process. My understanding is the site plan review has been completed. It cannot be approved until the subdivision plat document has been approved, so it's contingent upon that. Mr. Keels received his first comment letter back on that on August 13th, so they're on track to have that review completed likely within the next few weeks. And then the building plans are under review as well. I believe they've had some comments that have come back on those, and that is underway. So we are still looking at a potential September to October timeframe for closing. Your next item is waterfront redevelopment, and this is really a brief update. We are working on the solicitation of RFP for a consultant to assist with the preparation of the solicitation package, as well as the marketing of that. So that is something that is in progress. That will need to be advertised, and then once we have that, we can begin working on the actual package to solicit interest from a development partner. That is underway. We have received, and I believe we've shared the results of the environmental report, the geotechnical analysis, and the property appraisal. I believe we are pending the report. So all three of those due diligence items that you had authorized are near completion as well, which is important because we'll need those to put the package out and include those with the information when it is published. So that is underway. I'm hoping I'll have an update for you on that here in the coming months. Your next whole business item is a small business financing committee update, and I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chairman Barber to assist in updating.
And just to give you sort of an update on where we are, we have had discussions both with LISC in Building, Virginia. LISC had sent us a email of their interest in possibly supporting the effort. It was for a fairly generic letter just expressing their interest. Building Virginia did provide us with a proposal, a very rough proposal. And I think staff, after discussions with Jeff, has indicated that if we were to go forward with some sort of a capital loan program or some capital access program, that we would need to do an RFP to solicit proposals and evaluate those. So I had taken the Building Virginia proposal and sort of revised it to what I would consider to be a program design that would be more suitable for Portsmouth. The structure of that would be where we would provide whoever the lender is a loan at a below market interest rate, like 1% interest rate, which they in turn would relend to borrowers, small business borrowers. We were looking at in the range of anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 in terms of loan size. Loan volume probably would be in the neighborhood of 5 loans a year, something of that nature. Would require a capitalization around $250,000 annually. I would propose basically that if we do that, that we provide the capitalization on a incremental basis, so that we'd start off with like $100,000 and see how the activity goes, and then see what the demand is and how what types of loans we were getting. The structure would be where we would loan our capital to whoever the vendor is that would do that, whether it be LISC or Virginia Community Capital or Building Virginia, and they would relend it at a below market rate, but there would be a spread there, whereby they could use that spread to cover their administrative costs. And the possibility of a fee associated with it. There probably will be some upfront, costs associated with establishing the program, getting the program up and running, and the proposal from Building Virginia did have a fee structure in order to cover some of those costs. So we probably have some there. But going forward, what I would propose is we would put together a scope of services that we would ask lenders to provide a proposal on based on that, and then we'll distribute the request for proposals to the board with the scope of services so that we have a chance to review that prior to going out, and then put it out on the street and then receive the proposals and then evaluate them and negotiate that. So I would anticipate within the next 2 months having a request of proposals for the board's review prior to submission. So be glad to answer any questions that anybody might have.
The purpose of this was to provide funding for vendors who are being considered for contracts that didn't have the funding of the upstart funding, right?
It would be not just, yes, it would be for those, but it would be for other businesses too that had needs for working capital or equipment or other type things. So it wouldn't be exclusive to contractors are there.
So, okay, that opened up more, because I thought it was initially exclusive to contractors who couldn't qualify to be subcontractors to main contractors to give them money for upstart equipment, material they needed to start up. And then we're involving a middleman to give away our money, and they're charging us to give away our money and charging us to set the program up. I think it's a lot. I think it's convex. You made it more complex than initially. That's why I wanted to be on this committee when we first brought it up. I volunteered to be on the committee, but I was never invited to any of the meetings or any of the conversations. But I think it's more convoluted now. It's just like going into the bank and get a loan again. You got a lot of qualifications. It's not us, the EDA, helping our local Portsmouth people. We're relying on a third-party agency to help our local people when we could very well set this program up in-house and do it ourselves. But
I think this is where you and I disagree. And the reason for that disagreement is that in order to manage a loan program, we would have to staff up one way or another. Either bring on internal staff or hire staff here to do it.
personnel. I mean, it doesn't take an entire staff to do that, Neil, for Portsmouth. What we're trying to do, you got to be realistic in your parameters too. So go ahead and continue and tell me what we.
Okay. So if you hire a person, the loan volume that I anticipate would not necessitate a full-time person. The current staff here is limited and does not have the capacity to do it. So that is reason why you got to pay for the administration one way or another. Either pay for it from a third party or pay for it internally. I just don't see it.
I'll be interested to see some of the proposals that come in, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to involve a list or a third party to do something that we're trying to do. I mean, as far as like they're charging to set the program up for us, then they're charging a fee on the money that they loan to people, and then they're making the loan process is not going to be any easier than going to the bank. And that's what the initial purpose of this was, to help local vendors, local minority subcontractors that couldn't get chosen for a job because they lacked the capital to get started. They lacked the material to get started, the capital to get started. So I thought that was the initial purpose of setting up this committee and research and doing this research.
That was one of them, but not exclusive.
So in regards to the qualifying for the loan, do we have the right to determine what that criteria would be, or does the lending bank use their existing guidelines?
We would approve the lending criteria and the credit there. Yes. as a part of the contract between ourselves and the, yeah.
I guess I'm sort of in the middle, but I do see the need of it possibly being somebody other than us to it. I would think that there are some liability issues that would be involved with us getting into a program like that if people didn't pay it back, or, I think that it would be a complex type of situation. So I do think that we need to look at having someone outside do that. I mean, we would have to negotiate the fees and, like you say, determine what the parameters would be for lending. We could make, if we have the ability to make it loose enough so that it would be a good thing for those persons applying, then I just think we should consider an outside source. I wouldn't want us to be involved in the liability of this board.
Yeah, how would the board be involved in the liability of that?
Whenever you
Explain
deal with
that.
finances, there's liability.
That's just a broad statement.
It's not a liability, it's just an issue of what do you do with problem loans? Someone that does not pay. And do you, if you've got a small business, and I'll just use like got a painting contractor that has a truck and puts his truck up for collateral. Do you basically foreclose and take his truck if he doesn't pay? Those are the kinds of nitty gritty issues that you have when you're operating a loan program.
Yeah, I do think there should be someone else taking that accountability, third party.
Yeah, I was gonna add to what's been said. I think from my perspective, the big risk that the board would have, I wouldn't call it liability, I would call it liability exposure.
Yeah.
Because you're right, if the loan goes south and we shut a business down, we can justify that. But you're gonna have a citizen come out here and say, they shut my business down before I couldn't repay. From the ones that I agree that the program should have some sort of capability of serving small businesses who would not normally get a bank loan.
Who's controlling the money that the businesses are getting? Once they come into a contract with the city of Portsmouth, who controls the money that they get? The city of Portsmouth controls the money that they get. So if they owe the city of Portsmouth money, the city of Portsmouth can control what they're entitled to receive based on what they owe to Portsmouth, what they owe the city.
But
the loan amounts could be deducted from their contract payments because the city of Portsmouth controls the payments. They control the payments to the vendors. Am I right? Am I not right?
you're right, but on the flip side, who controls the process to recover loans that have no repayment source?
You could bring an extra staff member on to do that. You don't take a whole institution to do that.
Maybe I'm using the wrong adjective. Who controls the ability? You're going to have a staff person over there. I'll use your example. You're going to have a staff person who works for Brian. He's going to have to go and repossess some man's truck. Do we want to get involved in
When
that
do we
process?
get to that point, though?
We don't know. You really don't.
I think we should
any
revisit this.
Any banker, haven't been a former banker, any banker who tells you that every loan that they made was successful is exaggerating. Because you can see somebody in your business personnel, business goes south, especially with small businesses. You don't know. It's a risky proposition anyway. And I think by having a third party, yeah, it is going to cost a little bit. We do control it, but I worry about the liability exposure of loans that are not or cannot be repaid. And if you have a third party, you at least have them take responsibility and accountability for that. And we have the contract agreement that we can always change the third party. But you can't do that if you do it in-house. Brian's not gonna want to fire anybody because they made a bad loan. I mean, it is
I
convoluted.
understand what you're trying to do, but you're not laying out a good example for me. I'm not
Well,
understanding.
maybe we need to have a side
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah,
about
let's move
ability.
on and look at the side.
I would say though, if you want to do that, and if you have concerns like that, and I hate to give Brian or staff
Okay.
another, can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. I would have to say, I would have to ask Brian or somebody to look at similar programs, not exact. And is there a third party and not a third party, and how has it worked out, and give us his, not a textbook, 90-page program, response, but just a look at some similar programs throughout the country and their success, and more importantly, their success for loaning the money and recapturing the money.
I can give you an example. Right here, the federal government has a program, FAFSA. They have regulations set up in the program where if a contractor doesn't have the funds to acquire, to start their contract, they get advance payments on their contract from the person that's giving them the contract. That advance payment helped their contract to get started, and that advance payment is deducted from the contractor's balance in his contract. So the contract has a total balance on a total value to it. If they get an advance on that contract, the government knows how much is deducted, was advanced to that person, how much is owed, and how much should be paid in the end when the contract is finished. And it's all from the same document. It doesn't go through third parties. It doesn't go around a chain of different people.
I understand that. And when I was in Richmond, I was the director for small business and supply diversity.
Mhm.
We had a whole group set up of people who were former lenders, but that's a whole different infrastructure than we have now. And if we want to go down that route, we would have to do what I would say is you'd almost have to get a group of people, not just one person, to run the program. And that's a different financial model than we have now. Ultimately thinking, putting on my optimism hat, if this program takes off and if it spends off enough money, we can possibly do that. But we're running a program from scratch. And we don't have in my opinion, we don't have the personnel infrastructure to do what we need to do to ensure us from that liability exposure.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I just know that it could take one additional staff member that could make this happen and not involve a third party, and you wouldn't have to worry about liabilities of people not repaying the loan because you control the money that they're getting anyway.
I understand, and we'll have a sidebar.
Like I said, I should have been on this committee when I asked initially, but regardless, let's move on.
Well, we're trying to stand up a program. We do have some things that we can do in terms of the rate that we'll be letting the people, what the criteria is. We'll come back to the table with Bill's plan and the information that Brian will give us in terms of looking at some successful programs.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I see what you're saying about hiring a staff person. That's a lot of responsibility for them to, if they say no to someone, what kind of backlash are they going to get?
It's their job. It's
And-
their job responsibility. If they can't do their job, if they're having a problem about saying no to somebody,
But
then that's incompetence.
that's not necessarily true, because it could just be a matter of opinion.
You can't go on opinion if you're doing facts. If you got an application in front of you and you tell that person no, you're telling them no based on the facts in the application, not based on your opinion. If you're doing that based on your opinion, then you're out of line from the beginning.
We're trying to solve a problem. We haven't
Okay.
got all the information. So let's allow Brian to bring his information and Neil to bring his information. Then we'll take another deeper look at it.
One more thing to go along with that is that I think I had requested of you that we would bring a business person in that actually is the contractor who's gotten contractors. But I said I wanted that person to come in next month to give us some of the things that we should be looking at. So I don't know if next one is a good time, but that was what I wanted to do, because I think that you have to understand the problem, and really understand the problem from that person's eyes to know what we're trying to set up or what's needed.
I think that's a good idea. And as we look at what the criteria will be, it'll be based on some of the fact finding we have from existing contractors. So I'll get with Brian. If you give us the name of the individual, see if we can slot it into the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, obviously, we have some follow-up work to do, and we'll be in communication with the Finance Committee and the chairman to bring back that information at your September meeting. Transitioning to new business, and I think this is kind of a timely discussion item that we have in front of us here. We do have, this is Renetta Mitchell with Mitchell Consulting Group, who has overseen the preparation of the city's disparity study. And I do believe that she may have some recommendations and insight into some of the things we've just been talking about as it relates to small minority businesses, their financial challenges, and maybe recommendations for some of the things that we're trying to do here to solve some of the issues that those businesses are encountering, not just here in Portsmouth, but really throughout the region, state, and beyond. So I would like to introduce Mrs. Mitchell. She has come in.
Morning.
Charlotte, just this morning to join us. Please take a seat.
This person, Mr. Verna comes in, I get up. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back in Portsmouth, one of my favorite cities. I am so happy to be here and discuss with you and just kind of lay the foundation and groundwork for ideas to flow, thought processes. I love the conversation about the small business finance. That is one of the number one hurdles that businesses, particularly small businesses, face. So we can talk some more about that if you have some questions. I was posed with 3 different questions to come before you and just have a dialogue and give some insight to. And those 3 things were, 1, to talk about the city of Portsmouth. As Mr. Donahue said, I was the project director for the city of Portsmouth, both of the city of Portsmouth's disparity studies, along with Portsmouth Public Schools disparity study. Also worked on the Commonwealth of Virginia's disparity study, City of Hampton's and Hampton City Schools disparity study. We're currently working on a disparity study for Arlington in Virginia. Who else? We do quite a bit of work in Virginia. I like Virginia. So a lot of insight around the VPPA, the Virginia Public Procurement Act, a lot of insight around the businesses and the business dynamics and culture in Virginia, particularly Portsmouth. So 1 was to come to you and kind of talk through the recommendations and what EDA or EDC could do really in terms of your programs around the city's recommendations. The second question was to talk about and give some examples of cities that have really strong MWBE programs and how they really make them strong like they are, the strength of those programs. And then thirdly, to talk about your question around the sale of development. I saw a lot of that appear today, and so I know that's a very important part of business attraction, development, real estate development in the area. And I'll start with that one because that might be an easier conversation to have. And I will just say that a lot of EDCs do not think a lot about real estate development when it comes to minority participation, minority women-owned business participation, but they are beginning to. In this, right now, we're working on a disparity study for New York City Economic Development Commission, in which that's exactly what they want to know, is how can we encourage more MWBE participation in the development when you do not own the land, you do not sell the land, you're just kind of working through a process of making sure that developers, minority and women-owned developers, have that opportunity to participate as well. So there are a lot of economic tools that agencies utilize for economic development. And one of those tools are tax incentives when businesses come in. And so those tax incentives evolve around the actual purchase of the land. They get an incentive if they're going to build new, and they use different delivery methods such as construction management at risk or design build. where they have minority and women-owned business participation included in that in order to receive the incentive, right? It can't be just talking about it. In order for them to actually receive that tax incentive or that break, they have to actually have that utilization and have a plan in place on how they plan to do that. The other way is through workforce initiatives. And I follow you on LinkedIn, so I see that you do a lot of great things around your workforce initiatives. And so that is also one of the economic tools that economic development agencies use is apprenticeship programs, local hiring, and making sure that they maintain a certain level of local employment with employees in the area in order to receive incentives and tax breaks over years, over a number of years to show that they do that. Some of those examples is New York State Development. The state of New York does that with new businesses and existing businesses. They have a really strong focus in New York on the film industry. So there are different types of tax breaks for the film industries there. They also have an employee training incentive program where the employer is actually refunded any expenses of hiring local New Yorkers to actually work in their companies. Chicago also has different levels over 10, 11, 12-year retention plan with businesses with not only hiring, but infrastructure update, going into industrial or formerly industrial areas and revitalizing those areas. They get 10, 11, 12-year tax breaks depending on which one they want to, the business wants to participate in. The other option is hub zone. So if you have hub zone areas to actually, and the federal government does offer some incentives for hub zone reinvestment. And a lot of agencies who have very strong tax incentives and tax breaks for corporations utilize those hub zone initiatives as well. Let's see who else. New Orleans. New Orleans also has industrial tax exemptions, restoration, jobs, workforce development. So there are a lot of agencies who are really focused on when they're actually recruiting new businesses or expanding of existing businesses in an area, that these are part of the negotiating tools that they use. MWBE inclusion, workforce for tax breaks, tax incentives over a term of time that they're utilizing. Any questions there?
No question. So
Sure.
in some situations where a developer, if you look at all the skill sets required to develop a piece of property, so for example, let's just say plumbers. If there are not enough minority plumbers, are there any programs to build a pool so that those particular types of needs become available going forward?
Absolutely. There are, and I did not get the names of them, but there are some programs, entrepreneur programs that actually build businesses based on the gaps that you have in availability. And one of the good things about the City of Portsmouth disparity study is we provided availability based on NAICS codes. There's the codes that assign, you're familiar working with the state, the Commonwealth, excuse me. But I know I always get that mixed up between the state and the Commonwealth. But they specifically say plumbers, drywall, electrical, they're very detailed codes to tell you exactly where your gaps may be. So some agencies across the country have entrepreneur programs through Goodwill, through United Way, that if someone's interested in starting a business in a particular trade, or maybe they didn't even know they were that skilled in something, that they actually help them to develop that skill, that hands-on skill, and then they go through another series of entrepreneurial programs, how to run a business. Knowing how to plumb, knowing how to run a business, two totally different things. So they really have to understand the both. So once they go through this, they help them stand up that business and help them through that process. So an entrepreneurial program utilizing any particular gaps that you may have in availability from the city study, and utilizing or standing up some sort of program where you can actually create entrepreneurs in those spaces would be great. kids coming straight out of high school. I'm not familiar if you have a CTE program, a career technical education program, but that's a great place that a lot of organizations start. I'm currently working on a project with Guilford County Schools in Greensboro, North Carolina, where their CTE program, where they're starting to bring in interns to work in the actual trades so that they can start learning those skills and then taking them through that entrepreneurship program.
So if I understood you, today Portsmouth could provide us with the gaps that exist.
Yes, they have that data where they can provide the gaps. The availability is going to be, and it's in the appendices of the study. Hold on, no. In the appendices of the study will tell you how much money was spent by the city in each of those areas, but the city has the detailed data of the number of firms in each of those areas. So let's talk about great transition into discussing the recommendations for the City of Portsmouth's disparity study. So the recommendations were almost similar, but not quite exact like the previous study, the first study that they commissioned. I do commend any agency for continuing to analyze their spend, analyze if there are barriers based on someone's race, ethnicity, and gender that's preventing them from doing business, and then putting forward some sort of program to implement and address those disparities and that discrimination. So do commend the city for doing that. One of the, there's two parts, and I will preface, because one of the questions, someone wanted me to give some legal advice. I am not an attorney. Thought about it, changed my mind. I am not an attorney. But I do, after 28 years in this industry, I do have quite a bit of knowledge about the legal framework of how these businesses should be, how these programs should be established. And so one of the most important things, and particularly in the current environment that we're in, is having a race and gender neutral component of a program is very important. And many advocates or proponents of race and gender or small business programs were like, that's not going to hit the mark, et cetera. It can. It really, really can. And I've seen it happen. But at the same time, it protects you from, one, it protects you if you don't have that data to demonstrate that there is discrimination in the marketplace against minority women firms. But secondly, you have a lot more flexibility with an SBE program than you would with just a race and gender base, but you can have both. So one of our recommendations to the city was to stand up a component of an SBE program. So the flexibility that you have with an SBE program is a couple things. One is that you can define that small. Commonwealth of Virginia is based on the federal government's. 99% of the businesses in the Commonwealth of Virginia are small, based on the federal government's definition of that. But you can define what small is. Many agencies, and I know the city of Charlotte does this, the city of Houston does as well, is they take 1/4 of the SBA standards to really kind of make that business smaller. And then they put a personal net worth revenue cap on it. The DBE program, the Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, just increased their personal net worth cap to $2 million. So if a business earns $2 million in revenue minus their primary residence and minus their retirement, they just added that you can take your retirement out as well. If your personal net worth does not exceed that $2 million, then you can that's one of the criteria of qualifying as a disadvantaged business enterprise. So looking at 1/4 of the SBA standard, a personal net worth cap, let's say just for argument's sake, it's $2 million, and a location requirement. The city of Portsmouth, and I don't remember the MSA, but it is the metropolitan statistical area, which is the Hampton Roads area. So by defining a small business that way, you really capture a lot of the small businesses that you're seeking to assist. The small business program allows you the flexibility to actually target certain contracts to small businesses because it's race and gender neutral. So as long as you meet those size standards and those location requirements, the city could have certain contracts that they say, we're going to target this contract for small businesses to bid on it only. It's very similar in concept to the 8A program that the SBA does, right? That is one way. And those small businesses would include minority and women-owned businesses as well. So that allows you that flexibility, and they're just competing amongst themselves. Sure.
Are there any localities in the Commonwealth doing that now?
That is a great question. I don't think Hampton is doing that.
Well, I know
I have not read Virginia Beach's last study. Unfortunately, we did not do that one. I
Okay,
need to read Virginia.
I know
Beach's last
Hampton
study.
and Richmond had talked about it, but
Mhm.
I think a lot of the localities were getting caught up into the race and gender neutrality of that
Mhm.
and were discouraged from actually
Mhm.
doing what you just said.
We just completed the city of Richmond's disparity study as well. First one they've ever done. But we just completed their study as well. There wasn't any pushback against a race and gender neutral program. They were just so caught up in the race and gender based side of it, or their MBE, because they don't include women in theirs. But their MBE side.
Okay, sorry, I didn't.
No, that's okay. That's quite all right. Great question. So that is definitely something. And you could also you could also have a small business framework as one that I just not proposed, or just, gave you an example of as part of your small business financing option as well. To really make sure that you're focused on firms in your area that you're trying to assist with the lending process. The other was to develop a long-term forecast. I can't tell you, and now as a business owner myself, I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to kind of plan what they're going to do, or what they want to do over a period of time. So the forecast really looks at a 6 to 12 month window of what opportunities are going to be released for bidding or for proposals, et cetera. And this really gives businesses the opportunity to say, hey, and I'm going to stay on the lending. If we have a business owner who is in some sort of lending, a minority woman-owned business owner that is in some sort of lending, but can't manage the entire program by themselves, if they had 6 months to know it's coming out, let me go and find Build Virginia, or let me go and talk with someone at Lyft and see if I can partner with those organizations, at least to have that opportunity to scale my business in that aspect. So the long-term forecast is really important, and not just on capital, on your CIP programs, but also professional services, general services, anything that is actually going to go out to the public for solicitation. It should be included in the forecast, because there are so many other businesses that are out there besides just construction. So relationships with business organizations, and all of these are still race and gender neutral. MWBE programs are really economic impact programs, because you're really wanting to include and increase the economic mobility of businesses in your market. And so partnering with organizations within Portsmouth that already provide that technical assistance, the entrepreneurship, advancement, or lending, all of those types of organizations that already do that and do that well, partner with them and create some sort of MOU or memorandum of understanding, where if you sent over a business that needed some assistance in understanding their P&L statement, their balance sheets, et cetera, that that business will be taken care of. So when they come back to submit a proposal and you're requiring a P&L statement, or you're requiring financials, that firm has had that experience or had that development with another organization that's here, right here in the area. And then one of our biggest, and I think they're still working on this, is the establishment of a business inclusion office. The MWBE program in is not really theory, but the program that they have sat in procurement and was an additional task of the procurement director. Administering business inclusion programs takes a lot of work. Done it, been there, done that, and you know as well. And it's not something that a single person can do, and not something that a procurement director can do with all the other requirements and responsibilities that they have. And last I heard, they were looking to hire someone to actually stand up that office. So that was definitely a recommendation that we made to them. The other recommendation that we talked about or that we made was to right-size contracts. And I was very excited to hear, I think it was you, Mr. Donahue, who said that there was a vote for $15,000 to board up one of the buildings, maintain the graphics. And I thought to myself, perfect opportunity for MWBE firms to bid on that. So the right sizing of contracts is not taking every last one of the buildings and making one grand contract for someone. It ends up being, I don't know, $1 million, but actually, breaking out those projects so that MWBE firms have opportunity to bid on some of these contracts based on the capacity that they have on those contracts. So that is really important, and that works. When it is done correctly, when it is intentional, right sizing contracts really, really works for your smaller businesses to just little by little start taking and building their company and scaling their company for those contracts. Any questions? I didn't go through all of them. I just kind of went through the ones that I thought you may be most interested in, but is there anything else from the city study?
Can you talk a little bit about the psychological impact of this? And by that, I mean, how are people invested in the process? Because if you're not vested in it, you can do study after study. So how do you address that? How do you identify whether or not an organization is vested in it? And what steps can you do to try to make sure that people are vested in it? Because I hear a lot of studies have been done, and I get that.
I love that question.
But
I love that question. If I were employed with MGT, I would have a different response than what I'm about to tell you now. And that is you can easily recognize the investment in economic development and economic impact. And I'm very intentional with using that phrase instead of MWBE programs. It really is about economics. You can tell when you're making a presentation or you're sitting around the table talking with the stakeholders and everyone's looking at you like, would you please hurry up and stop talking? Right? I mean, you can just feel I can feel the energy. The other way that you can tell that they're, whether or not they're vested is the types of questions that they ask, whether or not they are eager to turn over their data to you. Whether they're eager to ask you questions about what does this mean and how do we move forward and how do we change. They're eager if they immediately start putting things into place to make a change. 28 years in minority business development, 17 years conducting disparity studies, and I can no longer count on both hands the number of studies that people have sat on the shelf. And they're not cheap. But they do it because they're pressured by constituents to do studies, but they really have no intention of doing anything with the studies. And then so the way that now you can really try to change that is I always encourage part of conducting a disparity study is collecting qualitative analysis. That's one of my sweet spots. In talking with businesses, they ask the same question, right? And I was like, do you vote? Do you have a representative sitting around that dais? Then you need to stay on him or her until they give you some answers. And that is really where the interest comes in, because unfortunately, you're trying to satisfy constituents. Not any of you elected officials are trying to satisfy constituents. And so when constituents are well educated around what this means to the bottom line, then constituents then can now start to say, you know, Ms. Mitchell, I'm not seeing any goals on this contract. This prime over here is not paying me on time. I need something done about it. But you do have a lot. I'm beginning to see a shift in a lot of elected officials who want to really understand when we start talking about the economics of it and the tax revenue that is generated and comes back to those agencies, ears perk up. So that's the narrative that we're really trying to talk more about in these types of initiatives, is the economic impact of it. So when businesses in your area grow, those businesses hire, and generally, studies have shown that businesses hire people that look like them, and they pay taxes, and they buy houses, and they buy cars. And so when those businesses have that opportunity to grow, those impacts really help. And then that's where a lot of elected officials and policymakers begin to really start paying attention and taking note.
I have a question.
Sure.
What was your number one area of disparity for minority business, not small businesses based on their income, but minority businesses that are based on race and gender?
Biggest disparity in what area? Hold on, just pull it.
In the area of disparity.
Oh, for the city? Okay, let's go through that one. I just have the study pulled up here. So for all categories, and we looked at construction, architecture and engineering, professional services, which are your surveyors, your lawyers, if there are any doctors that were hired or healthcare that was hired, general services, and commodities and goods. The disparity index was the lowest for Asian Americans, followed by Hispanic Americans, followed by African Americans, and then followed by Native American, and then women. All of them less than 1. And it's not a percentage, it's an index. It's an index. But I can then go specifically and talk regarding the different categories. Let me get to that chapter.
Like, was it exclusion from majority contracts? Was it financing?
Oh, so what were the main reasons for some of the barriers? Yeah, so I remember these. The exclusions for minority-owned businesses were acquiring, not accessing, because everybody can access it, whether or not you receive it. So acquiring capital was the number one issue that businesses had. The other issue that businesses had was not actually knowing about opportunities. And that's where that recommendation for the forecast came in. And then also we had a couple companies that told us that they would actually, bid on a project, told that they were going to work on a project, but when the project started, they never heard anything back from the prime. In the case where construction.
They were just admitted.
Yes, they were just omitted. And that's where a program that has a compliance component to it is very, very important. I think one of the biggest challenges over the number of years that I've been working in the Hampton Roads area, one of the biggest challenges is going to be the buy-in from larger companies who now have to meet some sort of guidelines or requirements when they're bidding with public agencies. If it's a federal project, it's all too clear what you have to do because they've been doing it for years. When it comes to a place where there are no requirements, it's kind of let us just do what we need to do and keep it moving. I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be having that buy-in from companies that now all of a sudden have to meet requirements for the city of Hampton, Virginia Beach, whoever it may be in this area. I think Newport News is about to embark on a disparity study. And so that is going to probably, even more so than elected officials, is really getting some of your major companies on board with having to contribute to the economic impact of this area.
Yeah, could you, I don't want to take you too far into the weeds, but could you sort of compare and contrast the NWEBS certification to the SWAM certification? And because what I find a lot of small companies, it gets back to the two things you just said. It's not access to capital, it's whether or not they actually got the loan.
Mhm.
And that's a financing issue, which is what Neil and Mr. Brown was talking about.
Mhm.
And it's also, they're confused about which certification has the best value to them.
Yeah.
You know, when they come to Virginia, that we're told SWAM. If they're doing federal projects, they're talking about another. Any guidance or, and quickly overview?
Yeah.
I don't want to take, we could spend an hour talking about certification, and I don't want to have the board sit through that, but that's the confusion part that I think a lot of companies get
Yeah.
lost in.
I 100% agree with you. How I like to explain it to businesses is certification and clients. Certification is just a verification that the company is truly owned and operated. That's it. It doesn't qualify them in any particular field. I mean, companies still have to show their value in their work. It is just a verification. Commonwealth has SWAM, which any client that I'm working with in Virginia, we tell them to use SWAM. And that was the same conversation with the city of Portsmouth. Don't reinvent the wheel. Because really what it's doing is identifying those firms that have been verified to be owned and operated by minority and women-owned business. And SWAM has a small component in there as well. The federal DBE program, the federal regulations are very strict, but they're very cumbersome, but they are very specific as well. They're the ones that, and the federal DBE program is an ACDBE program, Airport Concessions, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, are race and gender neutral. There's a presumption that minorities and women are disadvantaged, but the DBE program is socially and economic disadvantage. So a Caucasian male can be DBE certified. It's race and gender neutral because it has that size standard. That is a main requirement of it. And again, it is verifying that the company applying is owned and operated at least 51% by that individual who is claiming to be disadvantaged, right? So for a company, what we tell them all the time, because some companies like, I don't want to be certified. I don't want to give all my business, tell everybody everything. But what it does is it really kind of does some self-marketing for them, honestly, because individual agencies that have programs in place are always telling people, go to that database and find someone that does this, find someone that does this. And the program is designed to provide opportunities to compete. It's not giving anyone anything. So if I can identify minority women-owned firms or small businesses as well, and I can say, I have this scope of work that I need someone to bid on for me, that's that opportunity to compete. So the advantage of being certified is the fact that now I may learn about an opportunity that I would not have known about before. And now I have that opportunity to actually compete for that. One of the biggest challenges, again, that a lot of businesses face is they They love talking to someone else about how to start and run and do and operate their business, who has no idea what they do and giving them all this terrible advice. So by the time they come to me and I'm like, where'd you hear that from? That's not even how that works. And so that partnership is again why it's so important, because you have organizations that is exactly what they do, is they sit down and say, for construction, your accounting is totally different than professional services. Construction, and I have a construction background too, so construction accounting is unique to any other type of business that you have out there. And the risk in construction than some other industries is very different than other industries. Not all, but some, right? And so that's where businesses, if I'm good at what I do, I also need to figure out how to run my business appropriately. Finances, paying your taxes. I've seen so many businesses over the years go out of business because they say, well, I'm not gonna worry about it. Uncle Sam don't know I'm making this money. Oh yeah, Uncle Sam does know. And Uncle Sam will come repossess that truck or repossess whatever it is for not paying those business taxes. So that is one of the things. And there's so much effort from organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, agencies who have MWBE programs, to actually try to provide that type of technical assistance to businesses to assist them with learning how to run their businesses effectively, to stay in business and profit from it.
Thank
I've got a question. I just jump in real quick. So Mrs. Mitchell, I guess, purview of this organization is Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
And we're obviously very focused on supporting, the creation and growth of Portsmouth-based businesses.
That's right.
And this is probably a two-part question. How feasible or likely is it that Portsmouth-based businesses are going to achieve the goals that we have established from a minority participation in contracting standpoint for City of Portsmouth contracts? How feasible is that? Is it realistic to say that Portsmouth businesses? I didn't think so. So the second part is, I see this really as a regional issue.
Mm-hmm.
That we need to work, as a MSA to develop the pipeline of minority women-owned businesses to meet these contracting objectives. How do we do that as a region? Because you've got, many different localities. They're all over the place. Some have completed disparity studies, some have not. Is there a good example of how we bring everybody together to create that pipeline so that we can achieve what we're trying to achieve, which I think at the end of the day, everybody has a common goal and vision for doing that. But is there a model for how we bring everybody together? We've got, over a dozen localities that are all doing their own thing.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll talk about it three ways. So to your first question around whether or not there's enough Portsmouth-based businesses, no. And there hasn't been a location that I've completed over 50 studies now, that ever had enough businesses in their single location for everything that organization needs. So I don't say that in a negative way, just the fact that, public agencies have very specific requirements and you can't find everything in that one location. Every agency that has some sort of initiative does reach out to its regional partners in many different ways. Businesses come from Hampton, businesses come from Norfolk, because you're right through the tunnel, you're right here. And so and even employees, employees come from Norfolk, they come from Hampton, they come from Newport News into Portsmouth to work, and vice versa, out of Portsmouth to work. We just, and if you can get your hands on it, and maybe I could send it to you as well, we just completed a poverty study for the city of Hampton. Very interesting, just really trying to address poverty in Hampton. And that was one of the things that we noted, is that many of the people who live in Hampton work outside of Hampton proper. Many come into Portsmouth. So that is, but that's okay. Regionally, your focus, the city of Portsmouth focus is understanding your market. And we've done that in the study. The businesses that are located in that market. And when there are contracting opportunities or goals that are established on contracts, the focus is trying to find those businesses to achieve those goals in that market, in that relevant market area. In North Carolina, we have this organization called the North Carolina MWBE Coordinators Network. So we have program administrators from all across the state, from Asheville to Wilmington, Raleigh, Charlotte, all over. And we come together quarterly and we discuss. The university system is included in that as well. We come together and we discuss what's happening in our regions. Like, okay, we're having a bond, a $2 billion bond that X school system is about to implement. And we know we're going to need some MWBE firms. What's our best strategy for ensuring that all of our MWBE firms across the state know about this bond referendum that just passed? We're building 30 new schools. And so we work together in doing that. A regional organization or collaboration for something like that would be great for the Hampton Roads area. And that just brings everybody together to share ideas, thoughts, what works, what doesn't work, examples, who are the best professional development organizations out there that can help our business with finances. One organization leads it and they send all their businesses to that organization to learn how to use QuickBooks. You know, something as simple as using QuickBooks. But that is the type of collaboration that we have in that coordinators network. And that would be really, really good for the Hampton Roads area as well.
It's funny, because we have a lot of regional initiatives, but they're more about selling the region.
Yeah.
Bringing companies in.
Yeah, of
We
course.
have not made that a part of the criteria.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
Because the argument you hear is that, well, the minority population in Norfolk and Hampton and Portsmouth is very high, but they're not getting a percentage of the businesses. And so it's really understanding what are the shortfalls, what's in the pipeline, how do we get them in the pipeline? But at the very top is, are you genuinely interested
That's right.
in making a difference?
That's right.
And I think that somehow isn't talked enough about, but it's crucial for anything to be successful.
That's the Philadelphia. It's part of their negotiations is the conversation with anyone interested in investing in a location in Philadelphia is they have the conversation. Economic inclusion, minority and women-owned business development is key for us. How are you going to help us now that if you become part of this family, in this community, how are you going to help us achieve that? And so Philadelphia requires utilization plans. So when an organization, and because the organization is looking for something back, that business is looking for something back, either in a tax break or incentive of some sort. Well, if you're looking for something from us, we're looking for something from you. And that is a utilization plan on how you plan to contribute to the economic impact, either through employment, through MWBE utilization, and that's a conversation that they have and negotiate with whoever's coming in.
Is that,
Go ahead. This is
is that program run through the city of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, or
Philadelphia.
the county, Philadelphia county?
No, it's the city of Philadelphia. Pittsburgh, I think, also has a similar type of program as well, but the city of Philadelphia does that.
I've oftentimes thought that what impedes a lot of what we want to do is because we have independent cities.
That's true.
And they don't work like in Chicago, for
That's
example.
right.
You have Cook County.
That's right.
And the thing is stuck, it's sort of dated, but I remember the city of Richmond did a poverty study. And it showed that from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., the city of Richmond had the highest per capita income.
Mhm.
After 6 p.m., it's the lowest.
'Cause then
So
back when
everybody was staying. And so I think part of our challenge is how do we, if we, for example, decide, I'm not recommending this, but if we decide to try to do the regional,
Mhm.
how do you hold the accountability that a certain percentage of those companies that want to be in Portsmouth or that are in Portsmouth are actually going to be effective so that we get a good return on our investment if we choose to do that. I think oftentimes that accountability piece is missing.
Mhm.
And after we look back 5 years, a lot of the companies went and we didn't get our fair share.
That's right.
Nor were we able to grow our fair share.
Mhm.
So,
That's right. You could always have a location requirement. And in your small business component of, the city's recommendation for a small business program, there can be a location requirement, right? So City of Charlotte, they expanded theirs a little bit. City of Charlotte, sits in Mecklenburg County, so we don't have the independent cities and counties like Virginia does. They have a small business program, and the small businesses are only qualified if they live in one of 13 counties, contiguous counties that all touch Mecklenburg County. And so they wanted to expand it just because of the volume of purchases that the city made. Plus, they also utilize that, their economic development team utilizes that also to speak with businesses or have conversations with businesses who are coming in or who are expanding and expecting the city to either, help pay for something or give something back in return for that. So they expanded that. So you could always add a location requirement.
Okay.
Mhm.
I, I got kind of out of the box question, but, how much, or I think there should be a correlation between disparity studies, of course, and minority participation in colleges and universities.
Mhm.
We spend a lot of time, we do have to develop our workforce development because that's
Mhm.
important with our workers. But when you start talking about the minority companies, the bigger picture that could hire these people,
Mhm.
what investment is made? You think about like doctors, when there's a shortage of doctors, the colleges offer free tuition for people to get into that field. Or if there are teacher shortages, the things that you do. What do colleges and universities, or what should they be doing to embrace Black entrepreneurs to have these businesses so that when we're looking for a Black contractor, there is a flow of them in the system?
I think that's an excellent point. There definitely is a correlation between the two. The Small Business Administration usually house, and I cannot remember which, if it's a community college or a college here in the Hampton Roads area that has a Small Business Technology and Development Center. Anybody remember? Do you know which one it is?
small business development, it was, I believe it was out of Richmond.
No, it's one in the Hampton Roads area. I
It must
remember.
have been either Old Dominion
It'd be open then, yeah.
It's not at Norfolk State. It's not, I think it's at a community college. I'll figure, I'll remember and tell you. But the Small Business Technology and Development Center is housed in a university or a community college to help businesses with those technical skills. And that is a great place also where oftentimes they will have discussions around entrepreneurship. Some universities, I know that there's a university in Houston, don't ask me the name of it, and I know the one University of North Carolina in Charlotte has an entrepreneurial program where students who are interested in starting a business will sign up through the entrepreneurial program, and they start coaching them through what type of business that they think they would be good at, either their degree based, whatever they're getting their degree in, or if they're looking to do something totally different. But universities do have some sort of entrepreneurial program, and then a lot of universities I don't have Wi-Fi. A lot of universities do work through the SBTDC to do that. But you're absolutely right. That's where the entrepreneurship begins in starting those businesses and the support once you start.
Well, just one last thing, we'll wrap it up, but
Okay.
when were the findings given to the city of Portsmouth?
Uh, maybe February of this year. Time flies. I was just here giving that presentation.
The reason I'm asking it, I'd be curious to see where do we stand against those recommendations now? Have we acted on any of them? Prioritizing or anything like that? Certainly.
One of the things I just most recently helped them with 2 months ago was revising their MWBE procedures to incorporate the recommendations. So that is a good start.
There's a committee that's formed by the city manager that meets, I think, probably quarterly. And each department is given a recommendation that's provided by the disparity study to address, and they meet to talk about that. So there is definitely a program in
Okay.
place, and they're hiring a minority business coordinator. And we are working with Ms. Vanetta Mitchell on that policy language that the managers wants to provide to that agency that they're creating. So that I can tell you.
Wow, you are a wealth of information.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
we go on for hours and hours. So I think I'd like to, on behalf of everyone here, and thank you so much.
Very
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Always great to be here.
And Bernetta, just as another expression of our gratitude, we just got a small
Gosh.
gift for you here to get back with you.
Is it one of those pretty cups over there? Oh, wow.
Don't let anybody else see it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
And if there's anything that you have questions about, I'll be happy to, converse with you on that. And my notes from today that I shared with you, I will type up and send to Karen so you can have its reference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
All right, welcome. Thank
Obviously, a lot to take in and assess, and I think carry forward as we work some of our plans and objectives for the year. We do have an update on our business investment grant program. And I don't expect you to be able to, well, you might be able to make it out. We're dealing with a smaller screen today. But we did want to provide an update on the 3 grant programs that the EDA has tasked us with administering. The first is your real property investment grant. We did launch the first round on July 1. That closed on the 31st of the month. You had actually seen a few of these grants come before you, which you approved previously, but we had a total of 21 applications that were received by the cutoff, which was 5 o'clock on the 31st of July. 5 of those came before you in July, which you have approved, but we had another pretty incredible list of projects and requests as well. We had $351,010.44 to be exact in funding requests that came through in just the first round, which is pretty incredible. I don't think we've ever had that happen. I think it's a combination of the outreach efforts that staff had made to a number of the businesses that we've been working with, but also property owners as well. And just kind of as a follow-up to our last discussion item, the MWBE participation rate for those applications, those 21 that we have received, is 81%. Overwhelming majority of minority and women-owned businesses that have submitted those applications. We have a bit of an issue as the EDA only allocated $300,000 for the entire fiscal year. We are dealing with a gap of just over $51,000 in funding that we don't have funds to meet the requested amount for the applications. We do have a list of about, I think 11 or 12 applications to review for your consideration and approval today. But before we move forward with that, I did want to have a discussion about increasing the allocation of funding for this round to meet the requests. That is staff's recommendation. We are not recommending any other funding be allocated to this program for the fiscal year. Our recommendation would be to come back later on in the year and look at the other two programs, which I'll review with you here in a moment, to see if there's any additional funding that hasn't been utilized in those programs that could then be shifted over. If you recall, at the end of the fiscal year in FY24, we moved about $70,000 from the other programs to cover the real estate program added requests. So we've done that in the last year. My recommendation is you fund these requests in full for this round, and then later on in the year we could revisit the overall programs to see what funds may be available. So wanted to put that out there for discussion. Obviously, with the applications that we have listed on the agenda, we'll just need to know what capacity we have to approve this. We can certainly discuss this now, or I can go through the other two programs and then.
Didn't we increase a budget previously? A grant budget previously that was over budget by adding?
Yes, sir. You did last fiscal year, which ended June 30th. So we had an additional $70,000 that you had allocated. So it was about $370, I think, when it was all said and done, you allocated entirely to the program. So we're looking at $351 this year.
But wasn't it, at least portion of that came from underutilized money?
Correct. We shifted monies from the acceleration grant program. And we also, I think, reallocated some from your economic development grant line. So it was a combination of sources where we moved monies around to meet the shortfall. The recommendation we have at this stage would be to move from your operating budget, the funding from your economic development grant line, which I believe, there's a copy of the budget here somewhere, I believe. 800,000 is in that line. I would recommend moving from your economic development grant line, which is line 16. You have $800,000 allocated. This is really a fund that you establish every year for any grants that don't fit within the kind of parameters of some of the established programs. And we could shift that funding, that $51,010.44 from that line to the real estate grant program. So a minimal impact there on the economic development grant line, but that would fully fund your real estate grant program.
Should you do a motion on that now?
We're open to that. Yes.
I so move.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just a question, if we do that, will that close out the real estate property investment grant program for the year?
It would close out the program temporarily until we could reassess the status of the other two grant programs for any additional funds. So we could revisit this quarterly. We could revisit this at a midpoint 6 months through the fiscal year. And if the, for instance, the acceleration grant hasn't been fully utilized or 50% of the funding is still there, we could do a reallocation of those funds at that time and reopen the program. I think what we would be doing would be in the interim waitlisting any potential applicants, so that we would know if there was a pipeline of requests that would be waiting.
I'm not sure, I'm a treasurer now, I notice, but, but the fiscal year for this budget is July 1.
Correct. Yes.
So you saying from July 1 to now, we've got 351,000. So this definitely is not going, I mean, we supposed to go to June of next year, so this is a big thing. Because we would be suspending the program, I would assume, until we figured out how we were gonna do the money. So I do think that we need to relook some things. I think that, Charlie, you don't want to put yourself in a position that every year you're adding money to it, because you gotta have a bigger plan than that. And whether or not we need to look at the criteria, or maybe, for instance, I don't know, maybe if we're doing 5 or 6 businesses that are the same, maybe that's not where we should, we might need to have some different criteria. If we're gonna run out of money halfway from the budget.
That's what I argued last time.
I do
But-
think, look at this now, I think we were in
That's my
that
exact
position.
argument
before.
last time. You gotta have a cutoff point at some time because you're gonna keep exceeding the budget.
I agree with what you're saying. But we wanted the program to grow,
We do,
so we may want to revisit how much money we allocate for that.
right,
Because if it's, a prosperous business,
yeah,
item, then I'm sure all these businesses have been vetted through, all the sources here.
yeah,
We need to revisit how much we allocate.
I think one of the issues, with the last 2 rounds, were that we had, some projects that had been kind of in the pipeline for a fairly lengthy period that weren't ready to submit their applications. And they all kind of came in at once. So we have the professional building on High Street, which is a big project. They had multiple applications that they were eligible for. This round, we have the Mustard Seed Place has 2 applications that are in with this group. So we've had some larger projects that had multiple requests that came in. And it was just, I think, a circumstance of they had been working for an extended period of time to get to a point where they could submit. They had their permitting approvals, they had all their other documents, in order. And that, I think, was partly the reason. I think the other reason for this is, the program's been successful and promoted. Staff has been working closely with the business community to make sure they're aware of it, so they can take advantage of it. And that's part of the success of the program, is that we have more requests than we have funding for. But I do agree, we'd like to kind of review the program. We can do that. And I think, we can review the other 2 programs to see where maybe some funding's not being utilized fully. We can shift that and maybe with those other programs a little bit too.
yeah. Well, I think we definitely should approve what's in the pipeline by moving the money out, but then also to not revamp, but look at what we have and the people that we have funded in the past, if it's a certain category, then I don't know, but I think it needs to take a more in-depth look at that. So did you get a second on your, we had a second on your, this is just a question.
We do have a motion. I'll
No, she's made a motion, right?
Yeah.
We have a motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown seconded the motion.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, the motion was to reallocate $51,010 and 44 cents. We round it up if you'd like to just 351 and 11 from the economic development grant line
Mhm.
to the real property investment grant program. Just
Yes.
make sure we're correct. Okay. And are you okay with just kind of rounding the 51 and $11?
Sure.
That'll keep it simple. on the
No.
side. All right.
I'll
Okay.
chip in the 56 cents.
Is there any other
I got
discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll read the poll. Mr. Barber,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith,
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
and Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Chair, the item is approved by a vote of 7-0. So I'm going to just touch really quickly on the other two grant programs. The utilization of these is much less in this first round. We just had 7, and I don't mean to just say just 7. It's a respectable number, but that was for the Small Business Development Grant Program. So we did have 7 applications that came in during July. Those are currently being reviewed, and if fully funded at their maximum level of $2,000, that would be a $14,000 award based on those applications. So those are in the process of being reviewed. 100% of those are SWAM businesses, and that's, I think, again, a recognition of the outreach efforts that have been made. Okay, moving on to the last new business item is your real estate investment grant programs. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. I'll read through them since the monitor's a little bit smaller here. If you have any questions, please stop and ask. My recommendation would be, unless there are any specific objections on any of the applications, that we would vote in their entirety to approve. I will note on the agenda, there is the last item is 4,000 Victory Boulevard. That property actually did not meet the submittal deadline. So that property is not being provided to you for recommendation for approval. It was not in your package. That went out on Friday. The first 2 applications are 2880 A and B Airline Boulevard. The applicant is Victory West Thrill Park. That is the property owner. The work for 2880 A is the replacement of the 4 rooftop HVAC units. They're older. It has been causing some issue with the marketing of the properties. And then same thing at 2880B. There's a split system HVAC unit. It's an $83,000 expense, and they're asking for $22,500 for 2880A and $19,000 2880B. These are the 2 locations, Boulevard Bingo at the Victory West Shopping Center. That is a vacant space currently. It's being marketed. And then the adjacent space is Port Rover. And obviously they've have an operating business there, but they've got some issues. So these are the storefronts. And again, we're looking at the air conditioning systems are dated and in need of replacement. The next property is 3409 South Street. One Accord Behavioral Health Services is the property owner and also the occupant. They are proposing to frame and build out 6 office spaces with new electrical plumbing modifications, replacement of flooring throughout, HVAC replacement and interior painting. The total project cost is $55,700. They're requesting $25,000, the maximum amount under the program, which is a 55% match provided. You can see here it's very dated. Looks like it has served as a medical office in the past, but is in need of some serious updating. And again, that is the owner and will be the occupant. 2858 and 2886B Airline Boulevard. This is also in the Victory West Shopping Center. This is for exterior painting of the main shopping center. There is a total project cost of $20,000. They're requesting just 6318 of that, which is the remainder of grant funding available for the property. If you recall, they can use this up to 3 times on a property. And that is what's being proposed. They're looking at updating and painting the entire front there of the shopping center. They have recently also made some upgrades to the lighting. I think they've gone all LED for security reasons. So looking to kind of refresh and rebrand the property. I know that the shopping centers was something that had come up last year that you all were interested in trying to modernize our retail centers. So this is what Victory West is working to do there. The next application is 107th Street. This is in the Port Center Commerce Park. The property owner, the Incu Hub, is planning for a roof replacement and exterior painting. The total project cost is $65,520. They're requesting $13,741.61, which is a 50% reimbursement of the portion of their project. You can see the exterior and roof here. Incu Hub has been expanding, so they recently had another expansion there. They're one of our kind of premier co-working spaces in the city. They're headquartered and they started here in Portsmouth. They recently expanded and opened another location in Hampton, so they're growing. They've been very successful. This would be their first time using this program. Your next application is 1 Beechwood Court. C&T Marine Incorporated is proposing for replacement of all interior flooring, baseboards, interior painting, LED interior and exterior lighting that will replace the existing lighting and a kitchen remodel. It's just over $50,000 in total project cost, and they're requesting the 50% match for the program. So you can see here again, it's a dated facility that will be certainly quite an upgrade for what they have now. Your next application is 309 Columbia Street. Crambius Properties is the property owner. They are proposing an ADA bathroom installation, and that will include framing, drywall, flooring, painting, toilets, sinks, and grab bars. It's a total project cost of $26,200. They're asking for a 50% match of $13,100. You can see it really is kind of a shell here. So looking at a build out and complete refinishing of the interior space. 3300 Cedar Lane. This is a little bit of a different one. This is St. Christopher's School, Christopher Academy, as you all may know it, on Cedar Lane. Christopher Academy has recently purchased the space that they've been leasing for many, many years from the church. So they are now the property owner. They are looking to replace 3 HVAC units. The system that has been there for many, many decades has really been failing for many years. They came to us several years ago. They didn't qualify at the time. They qualify now. It's an almost $60,000 expense, as you can see there, $58,500. So they're asking for $25,000, the maximum grant award. You can see the equipment there. It's very old. They are also using some window units in the classrooms as well. But this will allow for their transition into ownership of the property and to ensure that the school has a conditioned space environment. It's one of our few independent schools in the city, so it's good to see that they're growing and they've secured their space for the future as well. 1628 Portsmouth Boulevard. This is For Whom We Serve. They're the property owner. They're proposing a roof replacement, exterior painting, and then a phase one of a vanilla shell project. It's just over $25,000 in cost, and they're asking for the 50% match of $12,740. This is the space here. Doesn't look like much, but certainly with the exterior upgrades and roof replacement, I think that we'll be making that available for lease. I had mentioned the Mustard Seed Place. This is one of the two applications we've received for the property, 340 High Street. This is the third floor space. OMD on High Street is the applicant. They are the property owner. They're proposing to install 10,800 square feet of flooring on the third floor of the Mustard Seed Place, which will be an events venue. The total project cost is quite substantial. It's $137,000. They're asking for the $25,000 grant. It's they're providing an 81%, almost 82% match. You can see the vacant space here. They have just started the process of doing the build out. So again, we're looking at the flooring for the entire space. This was recently approved by the city council as a new event and entertainment venue. We'll also include a rooftop deck area for events and I guess parties. The other Mustard Seed location, this is really a great one. This is the YWCA of Hampton Roads, which is relocating to Portsmouth, will be headquartered here now. They are proposing to install new lighting, painting, new flooring, shelving in two of the offices, and a security system. It's a $32,000 expense, and they're asking for $17.47. And you can see there they're in the process of starting the work. They've still got a little ways to go. It was kind of a shell space that was provided to them, and now they're building now. So excited to have YWCA here in Portsmouth. They have been a partner of ours, and I think they're looking to be more involved and engaged in the city. So that was the last of the grant applications. If there are any questions or discussions, I think they're happy.
Move to approve as a package.
Second. Mr. Holman. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll read the roll. Mr. Barber?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Pardon, Mr. James?
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon?
Yes.
Here, the item is approved by a vote of 6-0. I do believe we're in need of a closed meeting. There is a resolution that has been prepared, and I believe Vice Chair has.
All right, I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to code section, subsection 2.2-3711A-.3 for the purposes of discussing disposition of real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically regarding 1100 High Street, and pursuant to code section 2.2-3711A.6 for purposes of discussing or consideration of the investment of public funds for competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the governmental unit would be adversely affected, specifically regarding project Sempter, Middlore, Black Brand, and EDA quarterly nonprofit grants.
Second.
Roll, Mr. Barber.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith.
Yes.
Smith is absent. Mr. James
Yes.
and Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Chair, the item is approved by a vote of 6-0. We are now in a closed meeting.
I hereby move that each commissioner certify to the best of his or her knowledge only public business matters which lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were held, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded. Second.
I'll second.
And I'll read the roll. Mr. Barber.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Saunders Smith.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Chair, the item is approved by a vote of 6-0. We're now in an open meeting.
I move that the two items be added to the agenda for consideration. One is the EDA nonprofit grant award, and the second is the Black Diamond Black Brand Black Diamond Weekend sponsorship.
So,
Roll, Mr. Barber,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Saunders Smith,
yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Item is approved by a vote of 6-0.
I move that that the EDA award give back to the block $1,200 in sponsorship of their efforts. Their block party and celebration.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Barber and Commissioner Brown. The roll, Mr. Barber,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Saunders Smith,
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
And Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Move that we authorize an expenditure of $5,000 to Black Brand Black Diamond Weekend event.
Thank you. I'll read the roll, Mr. Barber,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Saunders Smith,
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Here, the item is approved by a vote of 6-0. We're now on to items submitted by board members.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that's not.
Yeah, the first, one I have is that, can we explore, I don't know if it's possible for us to look at investing a percentage of our funds. And when I say investing, I don't mean bank investment, I mean a different type of investment. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is many, many years ago, I was on the Portsmouth General Hospital Foundation Board. And that came as a result of the sale of the Portsmouth General Hospitals. You know how long ago that was. But a percentage of our money, well, a lot of our money was invested, and that was used to fund a lot of the community organizations and buying equipment for hospitals and that type of thing. And I would hate for us to have this money sitting at a very low interest rate when we could use that money, the investment of that money, to continue funding our community projects. I don't know if it's anything that prohibits us from doing that, but I think that we should look in that direction. We're very blessed and that all of us got on this board when there was money. But there was a lot of time when there wasn't any money in the board. And I think that what we do for the community is really needed, that we need to do something to ensure that we have some monies for future boards.
So right now, I think our money is combined with the city and their accounts. So you're saying any interest that we get off those funds?
Yeah, I was saying if we could, from our budget, I don't know what the legality of is, can we take a percentage of our budget say I don't know, $1 million, I don't know, and invest it in something that would bring a higher yield and that we could use the interest on that yield to fund our community projects.
And I understand what you're saying. Investment is risky. You have to do that through a bank. That's one thing you have to do through a bank. And then you have to have an investment.
Company. I'm
You
not
have to have an
talking-
investment vehicle. Well, whether it's a bank or a finance company or brokerage company, you have to have an investment vehicle. And then there's always a risk with investment because investment, you're not guaranteed to get your money back. There's always a risk in investment. What you're investing in, and they go under and you may very well lose money. So there's a lot of risk associated with that.
Yeah,
You got CD.
I think,
I mean, if you were to invest in something
Right.
like CDs.
wouldn't, so I guess this is a question for the attorney. If in the event, I'm sorry, were you?
No, I'm done.
If in the event, you could do the investment option, would we have to do an RFP to look at financial advisors to come in? Because it's not something that I think the board would ever want to do.
Right, no, I'm talking an
But
investment
we
company.
would bring in an investment company. I do know that, when I was in charge of the regional group over on the peninsula, we had an investment company look at return, but and they would ask the board, what's their appetite for risk? And if you say no risk, then you're looking at CDs and bonds, and the challenge is how you want to structure the return. Because oftentimes a lot of the financial instruments that they will give you, the return is so low, you have to, is that worth the risk? Now, CDs and bonds are not gonna be much more aggressive than
Right,
what
no.
we're getting in the city. So but I think one question the board would have to decide is what would be their appetite for risk? Because a week ago, Monday, I think a week from last Monday, the bond market went down and
Right.
basically but it recovered.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we don't have poor Brian over there worried about.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that we would have to
Well, I think
investigate.
the first step is to look at because we may not be able to do it.
Yeah,
Right,
I think there's some parameters, at the state level for investment of public funds,
Yeah, yeah, we'd have to look at it, what,
what those parameters are.
but, I can tell you from the foundation, I mean, they're sovereign today. I mean, you've had years, you've been up and down, but they're sovereign. So, I mean, it is a risk, but I'm not talking 50% of our money, I'm talking about a percentage of our money. And I guess we just need to explore what's out there, what's the market like,
yeah. But wasn't the source of their funding donations and contributions?
The source of the funding initially was the sale of the hospital.
No, who gave the money to the hospital?
What you mean?
No, there are community foundations that were what we call hospital. And like Teresa was saying,
Oh, okay.
when they sell the hospital.
When they sold the hospital, oh, I got you.
Profit, I feel profit. But
I got you. I understand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I suggest that, as, the chair of the finance committee, which I believe is yourself and Mrs. Smith,
Thank you.
we have a meeting with the finance department to discuss how the city handles its funds now, because I do believe that while they are in an account with the treasurer, Bank of America, I believe handles that. I believe those funds are invested in some form there, which is why the
Primarily
interest
CD.
and earnings is much greater than your other account that you had with, or still have with Town Bank. So maybe we can have a conversation with them to figure out what the options are. If there's some sort of parameters at the state level for investment of public funds, they can help us understand that, and we can look at what the
Okay.
options are maybe.
Right.
But that's something we can reach out to Ms. Barisha and Ms. Pope and have a conversation with the two of them about that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
In other words, we want our money that's been earned, our percentage.
Right.
You may not get that back.
And then my second item I wanted to bring is that whether we would consider having an activity once the new council gets on board, and invite people who had been on the Economic Development Board in the past to kind of come together and give an overview of what has transpired. And, I think and where we're looking to go, because I think it's important to get, well, the other board, I just want them to know that all their hard work ended up in us doing great things. So I think that's important. And then secondly, to invite council to see the direction of where we're going and have a reception or, some type of activity where we could present the board, we could present.
Work session.
Mhm.
That,
I think it's more of an informal, but,
that would be after the election.
Right.
And, after they've learned new council.
Mhm.
I like it. Couple things I like to add. One is to follow up on this idea with the contractor coming in, is that we could create some listening sessions where maybe we break it down into retail, restaurants, construction, and if maybe 4 or 5 people come in and talk about what their concerns and issues are, so that we begin to have maybe a working list of some of the challenges for restaurant owners in the market. I know I just recently, I won't say the name of the restaurant, but they were a great restaurant. They went under because they didn't have enough money for the air conditioning unit.
I know.
You know,
I know
and
that.
they
I
know
was
this
saying.
program was available and may have been something they could have used.
Mhm.
So I just think it's good for us to understand what are things driving the retail or restaurant business.
So you would like feedback from,
Well, we would bring in, let's say for restaurants, maybe 4 restaurant owners. And they would talk to us about some of the challenges that they are currently experiencing in their business, whether it's hiring, marketing, finance, et cetera. And then we would have an opportunity to talk to them about what programs we have available. And the other thing, which I have found just talking to some of the restaurant owners, that they don't communicate with each other.
that's not a requirement though, Malcolm.
I know it's not a requirement, but marketing is an essential part of growing your business, and they don't have time to do that. If they work collectively together, maybe they can figure out a way to create a overall marketing campaign for restaurants in Portsmouth, et cetera. You know, they may determine, I'm not trying to solve the problem, they may determine maybe working together on purchasing food items, they can get a better discount if they purchase collectively versus individually. But I don't think anything can hurt with them having a discussion to find out what's driving their business, both positive and negative.
I think so, because I think that we sometimes think we know, as people on the outside, and you really don't know. So I think it's always good to have information to determine so that we can look at it in a total picture.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to add some more.
No. I'm just, it's like an internal disparity study that you want to do with small businesses in Portsmouth and bring them in to find out what additional disparities they have. All right, I'm gonna round up some people for the next meeting. I'm gonna make this happen because it's a redundancy what we're doing, but if it's appeasing, we can make it happen.
But next week is next month is the contract.
Next month?
Yeah, September.
Yeah, they can't come next month.
Well, I think you want to have some organization to this, how we do this and.
A month notice.
Yeah, but she had already spoke about contractors, so
Okay.
we wanted to.
Well, contractors, but you opened it up when you started with contractors, then you started saying restaurateurs and small store owners and others. So if next month you just want to have contractors, I could round up some contracts. I'm trying to contribute as much as possible, logically, to make it a broad picture more clear. That's what I like to do. So if next month, we want contractors in, I'm gonna invite some contractors in. But if it's open to more than contractors, if you would like to hear from a restaurant owner, I know a lot of people that own businesses in the city. So, I communicate with them on a daily basis.
I think what we should do is there's some interest. I know the three of us, maybe we set up a meeting.
Mhm.
We identify the categories that we would like to get input from and then, roll it out over between now and maybe the first of the year. So maybe August is contractors. Maybe September's contractors, October could be restaurant owners, et cetera. And then kind of define what we're looking for and who we want to come in here
Yeah.
to talk to us.
So I would just,
Just go ahead.
yeah,
It can't be more than three.
yeah, so,
Not without,
Can't be more than.
it'll be a meeting.
yeah, so if I can make a suggestion, because
Wait a minute, I didn't understand. Let me make sure I understand. It can't be more than three.
Because it would be a meeting.
Three of us,
You have to have notice.
right, because it'll be considered a meeting.
Right.
so
If it's, well,
I mean, it can be three. It would just- You can have three, but it would be a meeting and there
Brian
would
is hosting this session,
Still,
is it still limited to three? I mean, so Brian's having an open session.
It's still a meeting.
It's just a meeting, so you just have to, it'll be just like this, so the public, it'll be noticed, that kind of thing, if it's fair, see, not that you can't do it, there's other attachments to it that, yeah.
So because I just need to share this because there's some overlap here. So as part of our business retention and expansion efforts, staff, we meet with various businesses. One of the things I have tasked some of the team members with is building some roundtable groups for similar types of discussions. So those are really based on our targeted industry sectors. So we've been discussing this for a while. We've done it from a kind of a workforce development standpoint, but getting in companies in the maritime industry, manufacturing industry. You can go down the list of what our targeted sectors are. We can expand upon that if there's a desire to have restaurant groups come to the table. Healthcare is something we've talked about as well, which really hasn't been a targeted industry, but we know we've got a lot of healthcare firms in the city that are located here and getting them around the table. And then obviously we can have two of the EDA, commissioners participate in that, but it would be probably capped. I just want to make sure that there's a clear kind of distinction between your EDA initiatives and focus on what the department is doing, because there is some kind of day-to-day function there. I've got staff kind of working on that as what we do every day. So just trying to make sure that there's some clear, I guess, goal and objectives as you bring groups in.
Yeah, and I think too, the contractor thing was more tied to the finance thing,
Yeah.
with the financial thing we were trying to do. So that was really tied to that, not to, what they could do to get together to make the business better. It was a different format to that.
so to be clear, in September, is that gonna be a standalone meeting or it gonna be tacked onto our meeting?
Right, it's like a speaker. A speaker coming to this meeting,
Yeah,
yeah,
so it'll be an open session, similar to what
Right,
Mrs. Mitchell.
right, like that.
And one follow-up question, are we limited to if we go to Brian's roundtable? If we're not actively running the meeting, we just attend one of his roundtables?
Hmm.
Are we limited to attending two?
The law
does that work?
recently has made it broader. And so if you're gonna be talking about public business and there's gonna be more than two of you, then it's probably going to be considered a public meeting. Before, if you were just sitting and listening, like a listening section,
Yeah, that's what I would,
and you promise not to speak,
say, yeah,
Right.
right.
then that would normally be fine. But there was a recent case that has broadened that. And so if you walk
okay.
out into the hallway and suddenly make some sort of comment, that could create problems.
All right,
So we as
that's
a
why I was-
caution,
I was confused
would
because
say-
it used to be.
yeah, it used to
You
be
could
much.
go
Yeah,
and sit in as
absolutely.
long as you didn't say anything.
And they're working on a fix for that in the legislature, but it hasn't happened yet. So
Okay.
we would just be overly cautious and advise you just to notice it. And it'll be a public meeting and you just have your minutes and still have your get-togethers. Just, there may be some visitors with you while you do it.
So, Ned, last comment on that. So if we're gonna be limited to two, Brian, can you have someone there to take notes, or is that legal?
Sure, you can take notes to fair.
Right,
Yeah.
the rest of the board can,
What too?
you can just email them to us or whatever, so we
Yes,
can,
yeah.
we can get some background on that.
And I would just say those would not be public meetings, those would be closed
That's
meetings,
right.
because we'd be dealing with the business community, their issues, and we'd want to hear from them.
So that would be enclosed, okay, yeah, that's what I,
That would be kind of a invite only,
Okay.
roundtable discussion.
I got you.
Because they would be talking about matters that are, potentially confidential to their business line and what they're doing, and some of the issues they're dealing with. So I think that's how.
if you wanna know the truth, that's the best way.
Yeah.
Don't put that in the minutes, but, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm not opposed. Well, I think we should bring your person in next month, but I'm not opposed to your group leading the initiative. I just like to know if there's a timeline in terms of what targeted group you're going to be talking to.
Yeah, so we would be open to, if they're, again, we're really, I want to say, focused on just our targeted industries, because again, there's some, sectors of the economy we know we want to be in front of. But if there's something else like the restaurant group or some other specific, maybe it's retailers, some specific group of individuals you'd want to have, just let us know. We can work to kind of facilitate that. If there's specific businesses, same thing. But we're happy to kind of coordinate that, put that together and host it. I don't know how often we'd be able to do it just because of what's involved in timing, but it might be a quarterly thing. It could end up being a monthly thing. So we just need to kind of figure out the schedule, and then we'll work to kind of get it on the calendar.
Did you have a guest speaker in mind for September session?
His name is Sean Collins. He's a contractor, for the city. He's gotten contractors, built a lot of houses in the city of Portsmouth. But I was talking to him about financing, what causes them not to be able to bid on contracts and that kind of thing. That's when that, came up. And he's been in business 20 plus years, graduated from ODU in that field. So I think he has a lot of knowledge that would benefit us when it comes to the financial part of it.
Any other items?
Great. Okay. Moving on to report back, I really just had a couple of staffing updates for you. May realize that we have a team member who's not with us here today. That's Amy Tracy. Her last day with the department was on Friday. So she's in the process of relocating with her family this week to Louisiana.
God bless her.
So we're really sad that she's moving on, but really happy for her and the opportunity for her family to relocate. Her husband is a
Yes, we do see.
exiting military member, retired from the Navy, and he took a position down. So they were frantically packing today, and I think the move is actually tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So you'll notice that she's not in the room. A couple of other staffing updates as well. Belinda Jones, who's our admin coordinator for Portsmouth at Work, is going to be leaving us as well. She's taken a full-time position with the U.S. Air Force in their recruiting office in Virginia Beach. So she's going to be moving on. The 23rd of August is her last day. So we're excited for her. She's been looking for some full-time work, and it's a part-time role here. And then third, and I believe this is the last one that I have to announce. Nala is also going to be moving on. Nala has taken a position, a really great opportunity with a regional nonprofit, and will be departing September 13th. So before your next meeting, so I want to make sure you all are aware of that. And Nala, is there anything you want to share about the new role and where you're going?
It's with a workforce economic mobility nonprofit. It's based in Chesapeake, but it serves the whole region. I'll be their new chief program officer.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Sad, but congratulations.
Oh, we're very
And,
sad.
and we need to take a moment of silence for Amy, because I just got back from Shreveport, and it makes me glad to be from Portsmouth. It makes me glad to be.
Really?
Doesn't
you
hear
say
that.
that?
Shreveport is,
They're packing.
nobody cares about that place.
Really? Oh, okay. Brian, you
So
need
it's really dilapidated and torn down, and what 50 Cent is doing is buying a lot of old buildings and new buildings and communities, and he's redeveloping and having events down there. So I went down there for a celebrity car show and was there in town for a couple of days. But it is the town is a wreck. Other than what he's trying to redevelop and restore, Shreveport is a mess. And it made me so happy to get back to Portsmouth. I was like, yes.
Sounds like they need her help down there.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Maybe it's destiny, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
she's
destiny.
going there for the right reasons to help out, but so definitely,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, I
going
didn't
to be
know that.
missing all three of them as they move on to, you know, new opportunities.
Yeah,
We're
I
excited
didn't
for
know
them as
that.
well. And we are in the process of hiring for a number of positions. So one of those includes Ms. Tracy's position that has been posted. I think we've got some candidates in for that. And then we have also been working to, since the new fiscal year, get the real estate development specialist position posted, which is going to help with your property inventory. And then also a grants administrator, looking at getting that posted as well. And then obviously we've got these new positions that are coming open. We have been interviewing for the assistant director's position. That's posted on a continuous basis, so we're fielding candidates for that as well. So hopefully we'll have an update on that soon.
Good.
But we're in a little bit of a transition, so I just ask for your patience as we're a little bit understaffed. Just when you think you're there to being fully staffed, you get a couple more positions, which are great to have new positions, but then you lose a few people in your
That sweetened pot,
start all over.
make him stick.
But in any event,
Two-year contracts.
we're excited about the year ahead, and
And some more.
I'm hopeful to be staffed up and running at full speed again very soon. So that was all I had.
Well, I know we just take a moment to think about all that we've done over the last year or so with this staff. It's pretty impressive, everything from off the block to purchasing, shop the block, rock the block next year. I mean, the land that we have purchased, we're trying to stand up some capital for small businesses. And what I like most is that we've challenged a lot of stuff on here. And as a result of it, I think we have come up with some really unique ideas, and we've done it with limited staff. We don't have our own staff, so we have to rely on other people to get a lot of work, Brian's staff. But I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish over the last couple of years. Given that, this meeting is over.